years, I had dreamed of working on cruise ships, so that's exactly what I did. I became a cruise director. Now, I had no idea of the impact that it was going to have on my life. And in 2020, after 5 years of working on ships, I didn't think I was ever going to go back to it. But in November 2022, I got an email, and in it was an incredible opportunity to join Royal Caribbean as a cruise director, and I decided to take it. I ended up going across 5 Royal Caribbean ships in a matter of weeks, which was an incredible opportunity, but very intensive as I was training to become a cruise director once again. So this is the story of how that happened. I was working as a TV host in Toronto when I got an email, and funny enough, it was while I was cruising aboard Norwegian Cruise Line's Norwegian Prima. You can actually check out that video right here. My journey began with a quick goodbye from my husband and then a trip through security.
And just like that, it is time for another adventure. There goes Palace.
The trip was pretty straightforward. I was heading to Houston, Texas to get aboard Allure of the Seas, which is one of the world's largest cruise ships. This is part of my brand familiarization because I'd be joining Royal Caribbean as a cruise director, but I had to tour across a few different ships in the fleet first. But let's get back to the journey itself. Now, I had access to the Maple Leaf Lounge at my home airport at Toronto Pearson, which helped a lot because I got dinner and drinks. Then it was a long walk to the gate where I boarded my Embraer 175 directly to Houston. Now, I love these little regional jets, and Air Canada took fantastic care of me. Plus, there was access to in-flight entertainment, which is always a bonus. I went straight to sleep though once I got to the hotel because I wanted to be well rested in the morning. All right, the suitcases are packed. It looks like I'm ready to go. Head down to the lobby. The pickup is going to be here in about 15 minutes, and then it is straight to Allure of the Seas. Let's go. Now, I'm signing on as crew, and that's very different from getting on board as a guest. One of the best parts, though, is that your transfer is included, of course. As we neared the ship, I was just astounded as to how big and beautiful Allure of the Seas was. Getting on board was even more incredible because I'd never sailed on an Oasis class ship before. The cruise director of Allure of the Seas is a guy named Bobby. He is a really nice person and he's from Texas, which is convenient because the ship was sailing out of Galveston. He was the one that arranged for me to get this lovely balcony cabin. That night, Bobby hosted the welcome aboard balloon drop, which has become somewhat of a legend on Oasis class ships. The following morning, there was a parade on the Royal Promenade called Anchors Aweigh. Now, I love these parades, and I don't think anybody does them quite as well as Royal Caribbean, so comment and let me know what you think. There's even this cool bridge that folds out from above the pub onto the Royal Promenade. Then, that evening, for the first time ever, I checked out the Aqua Show, and I was amazed at all of the incredible entertainment and talent that was on this ship, and the fact that this could one day be one of the ships that I get to work aboard. Now, the 70s party a couple of days later was awesome on the Royal Promenade, as it always is, and before I knew it, we were in Costa Maya. This is affectionately known as Costa Maybe because of how difficult it could be to get into. This is because of the wind and the swell and the exposure that it has to the ocean. Now, the captain of Allure of the Seas is a Canadian guy, so he was nice enough to let me onto the bridge for departure and even to sound the horn as we sailed. Another impressive feat is Royal Caribbean's productions of full-run musicals, and on Allure of the Seas, that was Mamma Mia, and frankly, it was as good as it was, if not better, than the production that I saw on Broadway. Now, the way that these work is there's actually a larger ensemble cast, and they perform Mamma Mia only. Then, the core cast perform other in-house productions for Royal Caribbean in addition to the musicals. But before I knew it, I was already on the move. I was getting ready to disembark the ship in Cozumel just 4 short days after I had boarded, and now was on my way to Explorer of the Seas. But the journey would take a huge twist. So because my inbound flight was late, I ended up missing my connection to Miami, but before I even knew it, American Airlines had already gone ahead and rebooked me on a flight that was later. Mind you, I do arrive into Miami around 1 a.m., but that is okay. I'm just looking out for my bag, which has an air tag in it. And it's great because I'm able to track it and see exactly where it is and when it's coming out. But good on you, American Airlines, for rebooking me without even having to speak to anyone. That was pretty cool. I finally got to my hotel in Miami, but by then it was almost 4 o'clock in the morning. So the time is 3:43. I have just arrived here at the hotel and I am so happy to be here. The travel day ended up being way longer than scheduled, but tomorrow, instead of taking the regular cruise shuttle that's leaving at 6:30, which would leave me about 2.5 hours to sleep, I decided that I'm going to go in by myself to Explorer of the Seas. So that'll happen later on. It'll give me a chance to rest a little bit and then get back into it. But for now, it is time for some sleep. Out of all of the ships that I was going to be seeing, this was the one that I was most excited for because it was the direct sister to the one that was about to be my ship, Adventure of the Seas. I boarded the ship in the afternoon and ended up getting hit with a 24-hour quarantine because it turns out Allure of the Seas was in an enhanced sanitation mode while I was on the ship. This ended up happening only for the beginning part of when I was on Allure, but still, I had to go through this. So my sail away was through this lovely porthole and through a webcam, which was super helpful. But I had some forced downtime. Now this was my cabin. It's a standard officer room, which isn't bad. And by the following morning, I was out in full force. Now we were well underway to Aruba, which is going to be our first port of call on this 8-night cruise. Now I also had never sailed on this class of ship before, but it's very similar to Freedom class in many ways. The cruise director of Explorer of the Seas at this time was a good friend of mine, Chloe. She's actually Royal Caribbean's longest-serving female cruise director with over 20 years of experience. And through these 8 days, I learned a ton about how to manage this class of ship, as well as how to manage my workload to make sure that I got ample rest time. Chloe was an absolute legend to learn from. After spending some time in Aruba and Curacao, we were already on our way back to Miami, and my time aboard Explorer of the Seas was already up. With a couple of days behind us, it was time to move to another megaship in Royal Caribbean's fleet. So the time's already come to get off of Explorer of the Seas. I'm here in my little crew cabin. We've got Scarlet Lady docked with us just adjacent to the ship. But now it's time to head to Independence of the Seas and enjoy all of the amazing beauty of the Bahamas. Let's go! My time on board Independence of the Seas was going to be very short, just a 4-day cruise from Port Canaveral to the Bahamas and back. It was jam-packed as a result, kicking off with the 80s party. Now that night, I also got to meet our cruise director whose name is Kat, and it turns out it was her very first time stepping up to the role of cruise director that day. Usually she's the assistant cruise director and she just recently got promoted. We still managed to learn so much from each other. Now, Independence of the Seas is about 100 feet longer than Explorer of the Seas. She is beautiful. Our first stop was Perfect Day at Coco Cay, which is always a blast. Now, that night I got to see yet another musical, Grease, and this was the full production as well. But before I knew it, I was off to the final part of my cruise director training. I was going to be sailing aboard the biggest ship in the world at the time, Wonder of the Seas, and it's also Royal Caribbean's flagship. But that is a whole other story. Now, my journey on Wonder of the Seas is going to be completely different because I'm going as a guest, not as crew. Plus, I had to take a trip back to Toronto for 24 hours to come back to Orlando, and that did not go according to plan. There were a couple of other things that came up as well, so make sure that you stay tuned for a whole other video about my journey on Wonder of the Seas. Hit that notification bell and subscribe, and hey, keep up with me on socials as well, because I show you what it's like behind the scenes of being a cruise director. That's at Cruise Director Kabir on TikTok and on Instagram. And until then, make sure to stay tuned. Hey, get out there and live your best life, and I will speak to you next time.